Much, Mr. Chairman. I greatly appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I think we've just provided a copy of the Martinsville Bulletin article by Bill Wyatt related to electricity rate increases likely, and I would move that we have that submitted into the record if appropriate. And y'all can look at it later and get back to me on that.
Without objection, so ordered.
In that article, and it was based on the PJM, so eventually I'm going to come to you, Mr. Fisher, for a question. But in that article, the Martinsville Bulletin reporter, Bill Wyatt, went through and took what the PJM's Executive Vice President, Stu Bressler, said the increase would be based on the fact that the PJM price for capacity reservation went from $28 in the most recent auction this summer to $270 per megawatt per day. And as a result of that, they took the numbers from PJM, they calculated them. I had sent out a statement, in all fairness, and they calculated that in the Martinsville-Henry County area, the average monthly bill of $206 would increase to $343. Now, it gets a little complicated for folks watching back home. I know you know this, but the reserve capacity or the capacity reservation means we're gambling on next year's cost on a particularly hot or a particularly cold day when electricity is being used a lot. And while it only accounts for about 8% of the overall cost in the bill, it does mean that rates have to go up when you jump from $28 per megawatt per day to $270 or almost $270 per megawatt per day. So the question to you is, and you can tell I'm alarmed, and I know you touched on it, what's that going to mean for constituents back home? Not just the price increase that I've already mentioned and that Mr. White went through and did the extra homework to come up with his own number of what that was going to cost his readership. But what does that mean when that price goes up? Does that mean brownouts, blackouts, or does it just mean people have to not have air conditioning or not have heat? And I would remind you that in our region, we went down a couple of Christmases ago to about 3 degrees. Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
As a resident of the state of Maryland, I was alarmed as well when I saw the Consumer Council there published a range that could be as high as a 24% increase in retail rates just due to the PJM capacity auction. That's unfortunate, but I do think prices give us a signal. Prices tell us something. And what the PJM capacity prices are telling us it's the combined reality on the ground, supply and demand. So we're reducing supply through EPA regs and other things. We are having significant load growth, which would be overall a good story. That's a positive story. That means economic growth. But load growth in the context of supply constraints means prices are going to skyrocket, and that's exactly what's happening.
And I'm sure somebody's touched on this before, and I'm chairing a hearing upstairs, so that's why I wasn't here earlier. But when I was a young lawyer a number of years ago, the Appalachian footprint in Southwest Virginia was the third lowest electric rates in the country, and that was because of coal and natural gas. But now we're on average with the average, and with PJM's reserve capacity auction, we're probably going to be slightly above average next year is my guess. And part of what makes these rates go up, and you tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, part of what makes these rates go up not only is the push to go away from the fossil fuels, but the fact that we have facilities that are built that are supposed to last another 20 or 30 years, and now we're having to rebuild because those don't expect that they'll be around in 10 years based on Green New Deal and other policies passed and encouraged by the Biden-Harris administration. Am I correct on that?
That's exactly right. And the only thing I would add is the cheapest electricity that we have is from a power plant that's already built, that's already been in operation, especially if it has useful life going forward. It is a real shame to shut those power plants down because that is the cheapest energy we've got.
And those are exactly the kind of power plants I have, and it is illogical to think that we're going to get rid of all of that. I'm happy for us to move to nuclear. I'm happy for us to move to hydrogen. I'm happy for us to move to wind and solar, as long as we're not sacrificing the people in my district who have, the average has gone over $50,000. The average household income in my district is a little over $50,000 a year. You suddenly start raising your electric rates to where the average in that Martinsville, Henry County area is going to be about $343, if I remember correctly. that's a real impact on these families, and it's going to mean that people are going to have to cut something out, and it means they're probably going to go cold or get excessively hot in the summer. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the consideration of my colleagues, and I yield back.